first college football playoff rankings put out last night, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN.
Yep.
Reese, Boog, Greg, Joey Galloway, phenomenal show.
Crushed.
It was great to watch. What are the big takeaways from this, Tone? And what do we need to be talking about college ball-wise on this glorious Wednesday, pal?
Yeah, there are a few takeaways, and let's start with the teams that feel, let's say, disrespected. And we'll start right here in the state that we live in, Indiana. Ranked 8th. The closest win that they've had this year is by 14 points. They've been absolutely blowing teams out. Now, their strength of schedule isn't what the rest of the teams in the college football playoff currently are, but you can only play your schedule, and they've been absolutely dominant throughout. And there's teams ahead of them who have not been dominant throughout, just like Indiana has. And there's a lot of like, hey, if Indiana had a different name next to their resume, they would 100% be higher in that situation. Like I personally, I would have put them at 5 or 6.
Hell yeah!
With BYU, like Miami at 4, they're undefeated and they have a better resume than Indiana. So I wouldn't put IU ahead of Miami. But like Miami, BYU, Indiana at 4, 5, 6, I think would have been a situation because BYU has 2 top 25 wins. Tennessee, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, they all have 1 top 25 win. So are we going resume or are we going eye test? Like that, I think that was the big takeaway from last night.
Yeah, big takeaway last night of the rankings. And Ward Manuel, who's the athletic director for Michigan, who's currently serving as the chair of the board of the College Football Playoff Committee, not to be confused with Lieutenant General, who is running the College Football Playoff Committee. That is a position that kind of rotates. And the people that are in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is 3-year stints, I believe. They rotate them. So last night, Reese Davis talked about, amongst other things, the IU, the BYU, the rankings. Vandy also a part of the AP vote, top 25, but not a part of the College Football Playoff top 25. So there's a lot of conversations. And Reese Davis was talking to Ward Manuel, who's going to be serving as the mouthpiece, I think, all year on that College Football Playoff Reveal show. And he said that, like, hey, the football eye test matters. And they said, obviously, Indiana has the 103rd ranked strength of schedule. I mean, it's the only one that's triple digits in the top 10 by a wide margin. I mean, it is like 57. Somebody has a 57 strength of schedule up there, and then the 103 looks like alarming. But I think also people understand, there it is. There's a 75th, 59th there, and then 103rd. I mean, it looks worse than everybody else.
Yeah.
But Ward Manuel, for some people that are disrespected by where Indiana's ranked. I am not actually. I am not disrespected by Indiana being ranked. I think a lot of Indiana people were pumped they're top 10. Okay, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And also, Indiana needs to know, and same with BYU, where you are right now with where this college football playoff is. If you win,
agreed,
you're in this thing. Even if they got Ohio State in 2 weeks or whatever. They got Michigan this week where Indiana is 14-point favorites, which I don't think it's ever happened before in history. And then they got Ohio State or whatever. If they lose to Ohio State, and if Ohio State remains up where they are, it's like Indiana's in. And I think that's the big conversation as opposed to should they be 6, should they be 5, should they be 7. It's like right now they're in there. Got to get a win over Michigan, obviously, as you go forward. BYU has the Utah game, obviously, which is a massive ordeal. That's going to potentially give them a strength of schedule boost because of the game. But what Ward Manuel said is a lot of football eye tests this year. And that's strictly because of the convo that's been happening. How many losses is an SEC team allowed to have versus like a Big 12 team? Are we going to put 2 Big 12 teams in because we're going to leave out one SEC team that has 2 losses or 3 losses? Or are we going to do something with the Big 10? And obviously this first one doesn't matter. It's the last one that matters, but this one kind of paves the path for what they're looking at. Ward Manuel said football eye test or like football ability or watching the games is a big piece of it. So Indiana being dominant, by the way, he talked is like, we watch the games. We think Indiana's really good. They weren't talking as if Indiana was screwed at all. They were like 103rd strength of schedule, but watching them play football, they look really good.
Unreal.
So it wasn't like the take that drop it. So congrats to IU.
I agree with you 100%, Pat. And I think there is some math, and the math was mathing a little bit last night. Let's say Notre Dame wins out. Okay, if Notre Dame wins out based off of last night's rankings, they are in. Okay, so Notre Dame is 1. Boise is probably going to be the other. That's 2. Big 12. Based off of last night's rankings, I think the Big 12 is only going to get one. It's going to be the champion because you see BYU there, and then the next ranked is much farther down. I think the Big 12 is going to get one, so that's 3. ACC, based on where SMU is ranked. SMU ranked number 13, being the first one out. I think that said a lot last night, so I think ACC, based on Miami or SMU, I think they're only going to get one.
Clemson losing to Louisville is a big deal. And I know that people don't want to hear this, and people weren't, they were kind of bringing it up about Indiana last night. And I heard Greg McElroy, and we got mad respect for Greg.
Love Greg.
GMAC,
Yeah, GMAC loves college ball. He hammers beer.
Yeah, he gets after it.
I mean, he hammers beers. I don't think I've ever seen.
Like chestnut.
I guess it was an incredible feat. Like, I am impressive force.
Yeah, deleting beers.
Yeah, see you later.
Can't just spin it.
Came up to me one time and said, "Hey, how you doing? Are you drinking a beer or not?" And it's like, Greg McElroy, I'm drinking a beer with Greg McElroy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we had a night, and it's like, Greg is a dog. And I respect his brain. But he went on a big pitch about how just because their brand isn't one that's supposed to be up there, it feels like they're getting punished. And I think everybody in Indiana respects and appreciates somebody like Greg McElroy going to bat for him.
Yeah.
But it definitely matters. Your preseason ranking definitely matters. Going into the season, being Indiana, as opposed to Indiana hasn't been, known in the football world for, 50? They won the Holiday Bowl in 1979.
That's right.
Never.
Huge win.
1979, huge win. They won that thing. And Penix had to run during the COVID there, but nobody really paid attention because everybody left immediately afterwards. So it's like what you were ranked going into the season, especially in this first ranking, definitely matters. Definitely surprised. That's why for the ACC, if Clemson would have been able to continue to go preseason, they were supposed to. They lose to Georgia, then they figure it out. They lose to Louisville. Now the entire ACC is kind of like being judged about that, I think, Tone. I think that is clearly how the CFP committee kind of looked at it.
I agree 100%. And if SMU and Miami play in the ACC championship game, if SMU wins, maybe Miami still gets in, but if Miami wins, it's definitely going to be a one bid league.
Oregon beats Ohio State in this college football season after a massive win for a big team. You go down the list, Texas, Alabama, everybody that's basically been ranked at the top. The next week, relief syndrome, I believe is what Coach Saban calls it. They beat Ohio State, then they have to fly all the way to Indiana. They stay in Indianapolis, drive an hour and a half up to Purdue, win 35-zip. Okay, so it's like if there was ever a letdown game, that could happen. Long 5-hour flight, then an hour and a half drive up to a place against a team that nobody really thinks is good.
They stink this year.
Nobody thinks is good. And then they beat them 35-0, hop on a plane, fly out. Then they get named number one school in the country. Here you go, you're number one. We FaceTime Coach Lanning. We go, congrats, dude, you did it. You did it, bro. Wow. You can hang them up for the year. You're number one team. Shakes his head, hangs up on us immediately upon saying that. Then they go and play Illinois, beat the hell out of them. It's like that team mentally is a number one team, physically number one team. So Ohio State, having that be their only loss, and it came down to the very last second, I think it's great for their resume. Getting a win against Penn State whenever they're not playing their best is great for their resume. And maybe this is the year that Ohio State goes on a run. But they're not the only ones. I saw your second talking point there. There's a Big 12 school that has a couple superstars that are very much in the convo, Tone.
Yeah, they are very, very much in the convo, especially what happened in the Big 12 this weekend with Iowa State and K-State losing. So it opens it up for Colorado to basically they're going to be favored in every single game they have the rest of the season. So if they win out, and then you have Iowa State and BYU ahead of you, who had tough. Iowa State has to go to Utah and play K-State. So there's no reason to think that they could potentially drop one of those since they just dropped one to Houston this last weekend. But I think if Colorado takes care of business, there is a definite chance that they're going to be playing in that Big 12 championship game. And obviously, if they win that, they're going to be in the playoffs as one of the top 4 teams, most likely, or potentially Boise slides into one of the top 4 teams, depending on where they're ranked. But they will be the Colorado Buffs, who the 5.5 over/under win total before this season would be in the playoffs at some point.
After they lose to Nebraska, too, everybody thinks they're just going to fold. They think this team, this is what they're front runners. You lose to Nebraska, this is when it's over. Instead, they've gone the opposite direction. And getting a chance to meet Travis Hunter this past weekend up there in State College, he travels over there to do our show, Big Noon Kickoff. His spirits incredibly high.
Love that.
He radiates a positive energy. And the fans of Penn State wanted photos with him. I mean, it's not like they were booing him whenever he got introduced. It's like everybody respects the shit out of him. And after meeting him, it feels like his type of aura is good for everything around that Colorado.
Yeah, it's something we've obviously never seen on this level. You see it in high school, people are two-way stars, but to do it on this level, and I always go to the quarterback. You start with the quarterback position, regardless of the coach, the tradition, the rest of the roster. Do you have a quarterback that can go and score and compete and win in any of these big games? Obviously, they do. And then outside of the quarterback, they got the best, I think, player in the country with Travis Hunter, being able to do what he does both sides, his physicality, his mental, like how much he studies film, just listening to him talk, the more you get to know about him, I feel like the more you love him. So I'm excited about this Buffs team and see what they can do the rest of the way.
I'm very pumped about it. Just because they've gotten to the point, too, where they feel like they've been massively disrespected.
Oh, yeah.
By their own media, by national media, by sports books. I mean, I brought up that Travis Hunter was number 2 in the gambling odds for Heisman, and Dion almost flipped the camera.
Truly.
Number 2? Travis Hunter and number 2, that never has been together. I'm like, I'm just telling you what the actual odds are right now.
Explain that.
In this world, I'm just telling you what they currently are, where he's sitting right now, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, Cam Ward goes into Miami, flips the culture of the U's back.
Yeah.
Now, they had a couple wins.
Yeah, Cal.
That people were saying. But whenever you talk about this NIL transfer portal changing and transforming an entire situation, look at all the players up there. Cam Ward transfers in for a 1-year deal. I think it's up over $1 million from what I've been told.
Should be.
Definitely should be multiple millions.
Yeah.
Whatever they paid him, it's already